Alrighty, welcome everyone. Sorry for we had a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're going to get started.
Welcome to today's session, everyone.
We are PreMed CC, a student-led organization established in the fall of 2021.
Our goal as an organization was to create an online program for pre-medical students at community colleges and universities, with the hope of guiding the next generation of diverse and inclusive physicians.
And while we advertise our organization as being for community college students, our events are open to anyone.
We realize that finding guidance and mentorship in a pre-med journey can be especially challenging for first-generation pre-med students,
people that lack the financial resources, or just those who do not know people in the medical field.
One of the best parts about our events is that they are virtual, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home.
We typically have events on Fridays from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and on Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 12:30 Pacific Standard Time.
If you aren't able to attend the event, all of our sessions are uploaded on our YouTube channel.
Many of our sessions will end up with a Q&A with the speaker.
Any questions that you have, you may put it in the Q&A session on Zoom, and our team members will read them and have them answer.
After you have attended our event, you can log into our website and complete the quiz, which will contain questions pertaining to our session today.
If you score 70% or higher on the quiz, you will be awarded a certificate to show that you attended our session today.
If you want to stay connected with the upcoming events or just want to tell your pre-med friends about the PreMed CC, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok as @PreMed CC.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm just going to do a quick introduction of our speaker before I turn it over to him. So Dr. David Chirikian is a PGY-1 Internal Medicine Resident at Harbor UCLA Medical Center. Originally from Los Angeles, California, he is excited to care for the communities that he engaged with and was molded by during his childhood. David received his Bachelor of Science program in biology from Loyola Marymount University in 2014. He later earned his Master of Science degree in stem cell biology and regenerative medicine from the University of Southern California in 2016. After completing the pre-medicine post-baccalaureate certificate program in 2018, he earned his Doctor of Medicine degree from California North State University College of Medicine in 2023. His 13-year non-traditional path to medicine would have not been possible without unwavering support from mentors and peers. David is pursuing his dream career and hopes to pay it forward to the next generation of physicians. Thank you for being with us today.
I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much for having me. All right, so I made a little presentation today just to kind of talk about my who, what, where, when, why, and how. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to stop whenever, okay? Next slide, please. So here's my detailed table of contents. Who, what, where, when, why. We'll start with who. So as mentioned previously, my name is Dr. David Chirikian, and I'm a first-year resident, also known as an intern at Harbor UCLA Medical Center, where I'm completing my residency training in internal medicine. I was born and raised in Southern California, and I'm very fortunate to be back. Medical training can take you all over the country, and as much as I'm thrilled, my mom is very thrilled that I'm back in the Southern California area. Some fun facts about me. I am a triplet, and no, we don't look alike. Here is my favorite photo of us from when we were growing up. I am the gentleman in the middle, and then my other brother Orlando's on the left, and the right-hand side is my other brother Giorgio. We are 1 minute apart. I also come from a big family, so not just being a triplet, but I also have a older sister who is a chef and owns her own bakery, and I have a younger brother who is studying graphic design currently. I was raised in a multicultural household. So I was, my dad's side is the Armenian side, Lebanese Armenian, and my mom's side is an Italian, the Italian side. I think very importantly, to describe myself as I'm a son of an immigrant. My dad came over to the States when he was in his mid-20s, and neither of my parents has a college degree. At the beginning of this whole journey for me, I was pretty clueless about how to get to where I wanted to be. And so that's why I'm so fortunate to be here to talk to you guys today. Next slide, please. Sure, my what? So I knew I wanted to pursue something science related ever since I was in high school. I was very fortunate to have a biology teacher that I really connected with. I vividly remember him in class one day. I think it was the first day or second day. He asked me why cells are small. And I kept trying to give an answer, and he kept saying, but why, but why, but why? And he really made me think that day. And ever since that moment, I really realized that science was something I was fascinated by. There's always something you could learn, and there's always things you can do to push the field forward. When I was young, I also thought I really appreciated research and really wanted to do research. I was drawn to research projects in high school, research projects in college, and research projects all the way through my medical training. But it turns out, I think I like the idea of research, but I'm not a real big fan of research currently. So I liked research, but not really. And I think importantly, one thing I really want to stress is that I was kind of a late bloomer when it came to finding my passion. I truly did not know that I wanted to pursue a medical career until I was 25 years old. So many years after graduating undergrad, did I realize this is what I wanted to do. Some photos really quickly on the right. So on the top right, oh, sorry, can you go back? Yeah, thank you. So on the top right is Bionda Wetlands. It's a nature preserve in Los Angeles. I used to do plant research. And so all of this stuff that led me to the medical field started by studying saltwater plants in that area. And then while I was at USC, I actually took this photo. The thing that lights up in green, those are neural stem cells. And I was working on a research project over there. So next slide, please. So my where, excuse me, sorry. Sorry about that. So my where, as mentioned previously, I've been mostly in California my whole life from educational career. I pursued biology as my major during my undergraduate career at Loyola Marymount. While I was at USC, I received my master's degree in stem cell biology and regenerative medicine. I really thought I wanted to do research. I'll tell you all about that on my next slide. In 2018, I decided to go back to school to pursue a medical career. And so I ended up completing a Postback program, which we can talk about later as well, at California North State University. And just this year in the spring, I received my MD degree from California North State University up in Sacramento. Next slide, please. So my when. So this is one thing I really want to focus on because I think this journey really is really similar to probably the journeys that many of you all out there have experienced or are currently experiencing. So fun fact, when I was an 8th grader in 2006, yeah, that's very long ago, I know. In 2006, that's the first time I ever volunteered at a hospital. I actually pushed around a coffee cart in the maternity unit at the local hospital near my house. And it was really exciting. I always was so excited to walk around in my little white coat. I used to give the volunteers white coats at the time. And initially, that's when I thought, hey, wow, medicine's pretty exciting. But I never thought I'd end up in this position until later on. In 2011, while I was a freshman at LMU, I was able to make my first and most influential research mentor. I want to pause for a second and just say I am a huge, huge, huge believer in mentorship. And I think that whatever you can do to establish relationships with people in your field of different ages and different experiences is incredibly valuable for the rest of your training and what you want to do with your life. Her name was Dr. Drennan. She helped me with plant research, and she really got me interested in pursuing something more than just getting a good grade in class. In 2012, like many of those out there, I thought, hey, maybe I should take the MCAT. I didn't study very much. I was kind of arrogant when I was in college, and I was like, oh, I'll just take it and see what happens. And I absolutely got rocked. This was back when the test was out of 40 points or 45 points, I believe. And I did not do very well. And I remember vividly thinking for a couple of months after that test, thinking, maybe medicine isn't for me. So after that test, I doubled down on my research interests. I got involved in more research while I was in college, and I ended up working all the way from spider research to plant research, even some medical research when I was a senior. And ultimately, after graduation, I realized that I wanted to pursue a master's degree in some type of research field with human therapy influence. And so after that, I worked at for a couple of months, I worked at my parents' business, which they run a retirement home, a small little retirement home in Southern California. And I was helping them with paperwork. And many of you, I'm sure, being able to help the family business is really important. So I was fortunate enough to get into this program. I went to USC, and stem cells is a very, very fascinating field. It's something that's blowing up right now in terms of popularity in the medical field as well. I thought I loved it. I loved learning about it. I ended up going into many different getting involved in many different research projects. And there was a vivid moment on Christmas Day in 2016 when I was working in the basement, trying to work with mouse colonies to make sure that I had the right mouse crosses in order to do our research project. And I just remember thinking on Christmas morning, I was away from my family, and I was just down in the basement, the dark, cold basement at USC, working with mice and thinking, maybe research isn't for me. And now, once again, I was at a crossroads where I went all the way down this route, and I had no clue what I wanted to do anymore. So a couple of months after I graduated, I thought I wanted to pursue a PhD and keep pursuing my education. But after I received my degree, I ended up pulling out. I finished my master's and I left the program. I was very fortunate to go back home, spend some time really thinking about what I want to do. Unfortunately, at the same time, a family member of mine ended up having a pretty severe medical complication. He ended up having compartment syndrome, which is a pretty devastating complication that could happen after a surgery. If you don't catch it fast enough, you could end up losing a limb and have other very, very complicated things and sad things happen to you if you go all the way down that path. So I was very fortunate to be there when we first caught it and we first diagnosed it. And as you can imagine, it was very, very crazy. It was incredibly, incredibly chaotic. We're rushing in the hospital. No one knows what's going on. I just remember thinking it was the most chaotic time of my life, trying to bring my family member into the hospital, trying to figure out how I could help them. They were in such pain, they were in such agony, and just thinking, man, what's going on? They ended up taking my family member back into one of the rooms, and they were giving him some pain medicine. And at that moment, I remember thinking, I was in such stress. I was such a high stress position. I didn't know what was going to happen. And in walks in one of the doctors who ended up operating on my family member. And it doesn't matter what he said. It doesn't matter what he did. But I just remembered this feeling of peace that kind of came over my life at that point. I went from this incredibly chaotic moment, one of these things that I had no clue what was going to go on in the near future. If my family member was going to lose a limb, or if they were going to have more surgery, or all these things, to feeling this just calmness and peace. And to this day, that's probably the most peace I've ever felt in a moment. And I just remember thinking after that moment, I'm like, maybe I should go back. Maybe I should reconsider the whole medical career. And so I was fortunate enough to talk to a couple of people. I had a couple of friends, a couple of mentors, and we all decided that, it's still possible. Even though I was out of school for some time, I hadn't taken a general chemistry course. I haven't taken a biochemistry course. In years, I took those courses. I hadn't taken a statistics course. I was like, maybe there's a way. And so we ended up deciding that maybe if you pursue a post-baccalaureate program, you might be able to finish your prerequisites and hopefully take some kind of prep course for the MCAT. And so I was fortunate enough. I applied. I got in. I ended up doing well in the program. up at California North State University, and I ultimately took the MCAT, and I did much better my second time around. Funny enough, by the time I took it the second time around, I told myself I didn't care anymore. And it's funny, the more that you don't care and you say, oh, I just don't care, I'm so tired of all this studying, it actually helped a lot. It made me do much better than I thought I was going to do. But that's a side note. So I was very fortunate. I ended up going to, I got into medical school. After your first 2 years of clinical, so medical school is broken down into 4 years, and the first 2 years are your clinical style, your basic sciences. So you end up in a lot of classrooms and learning about a lot of basic science stuff. And after that, you end up taking the United States Medical Licensing Exam, Step 1. This test is massive. It's an 8-hour test, and there's hundreds of questions, and it is absolutely brutal. And I just remember thinking while I was studying, oh my goodness, am I ever going to make it? I'm never going to learn all this. The books are this thick of what you need to know. And I just remember thinking, there's no way, there's absolutely no way. Fortunately enough, I just kept powering through, and I ended up doing okay on Step 1. I carried that momentum into my third year, where I ended up taking Step 2, and I did well on that exam as well. And now in 2023, I'm caring for patients. I'm actually calling from the hospital after having a long day on internal medicine wards. And so, as you can see, I started in 2006, and I never thought that just volunteering for a push cart for coffee would lead me down this road. And I'm just so grateful that I did. I'm so happy that I took all those chances. Next slide, please. And so why? I'm sorry. Hello? Oh, perfect. Okay. Yeah. So I want to talk to you about my why. I think this could be its own conversation on its own, but I think everyone has their own reasons to being in this field and why they want to pursue it. It's a very challenging field, and you have to have something that keeps you going. For me, it wasn't a single thing or a single moment that made me want to go down this route. It was just a collection of multiple experiences, and all these experiences were diverse and enriching in different ways. I really wanted to pursue a career that was challenging, but that was also deeply rewarding. And being able to work with underserved communities in a city that I grew up in is just so valuable to me, and I just couldn't imagine doing anything else. I think when you're thinking about a career, I think you really want to think about the communities you want to impact. I was born in Los Angeles, and being able to care for people in the city that I grew up in is really important to me. And I think many of you as well, for your own local communities. And then lastly, I kind of want to leave you on a little note about your why. So when I was in 2006, when I had my first ever experience, I was like, oh, I want to do medicine, or maybe because of this. Well, that why you want to do medicine will always change. It'll constantly be reformed. It'll constantly be molded by your experiences. But I really hope you don't forget it, because at some of your more difficult moments along your training, it's going to be the reason that keeps you going. Next slide, please. All right, lastly, my how. So, actually, sorry, can you go back to the previous slide? So that photo right there is, look how happy I was. That was my white coat ceremony a couple of years ago up in Sacramento. I was incredibly excited. I was still very young, still not tired looking all the time, but I was very happy. And then if you go to the next slide, please. This photo of me is the photo I took of myself after my first day of residency. And as you can see, I was a little bit tired, but I have a smile still, and I'm still very happy to be in this field and still very happy to be pursuing my dreams. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about my how. So I would not be here without the support of other people, period. I think that anyone who tells you otherwise is just either lying or they're completely full of themselves. No man is an island, and you're only as good as the people you support yourself with and the people you surround yourself with. I want to really emphasize progress. A lot of times you think progress isn't small, progress, you're not making any progress. But I really think it's important to understand that small progress is progress. Sometimes an example I like to use is when you're studying for some of these tests, whether it's the MCAT or USMLE, once you guys are in medical school and pursuing your USMLE scores, you might be exhausted studying and you might not be making the same kind of progress on your question blocks as you think as you wanted to, right? Well, if you only do 5 questions a day, or if you do 10 questions a day, and if you only get one more right than you did the day before, that's progress. And I think that the multiplier effect and understanding that small progress can stack on top of itself to become big progress is something that we often lose sight of in this field. So be okay with small progress. It's still very valuable. Trust me, I promise you. I want to talk about failure quickly as well. So I think failure is a funny term because a lot of people think that they fail along their way to become a medical student and to become a doctor. Failure is only failure if you don't learn from the experience. So did I fail when I took the MCAT back in college and didn't do well? You can say I did, but I also learned from it. And I think that learning from it is 10 times, 100 times more important than any failure that I may have went through. I just think it's really important to understand that there's not a single person with a perfect record. You will struggle at some point, whether it's on your testing, whether it's in Gen Chem, organic chemistry, whether it's on your clinical rotations in medical school, and you are being asked a question in front of patients and in front of your colleagues and your mentors, and you end up getting it wrong. You will fail at some point, and it's okay. I just want you to know that learn from it. That's the best you can do. Importantly, as I mentioned previously, seek mentorship. Okay, I have had such incredible relationships with mentors, both in research and in my personal life, as well as in my medical career. And I cannot tell you enough how important it is to be able to have someone to lean on, to run ideas by, to talk through, especially those in the field that you're in. It's just invaluable. And then once you guys make it, I really, really encourage you to pay it forward. You are here because of other people as well, and you should help pay it forward for the next generation of doctors. Last 2 points. I really think that people are often hard on themselves. Be kind to yourself. This is a grueling process. No one gets out with a perfect record on anything. Be kind to yourself and be kind to others. Other people are going through really difficult times going down this path as well. And I just want to make sure you understand that if you're kind to yourself and you're kind to others, only good things could happen. And then lastly, this is my favorite quote of all time. It really helped me get through a lot, whether it was studying for the MCAT or doing the hundreds of applications I've done over the years or answering the thousands of practice questions that I've done in the last 4 years. The only way out is through. If you have a goal, if you have a dream, make it happen, but you have to go through. Next slide, please. I really appreciate you guys having me tonight. This is my personal email. I'm happy to share it with you guys. If you have any questions about anything at all, please feel free to email me. I'm happy. It might take some time to respond, but I promise I will respond. Like I said, I'm a product of the people that have helped me along the way. And so I want to make sure I pay it forward. So feel free to reach out to me with any questions. Thank you.
Okay, firstly, thank you so much for this presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure everyone did. We do have some questions for you, and the first one is, what gave you the perseverance to keep going when you didn't know if medicine was for you, and when you decided to, when did you decide to do several programs, and what kept you moving forward?
No, I appreciate it. That's a great question. I think that answer for everyone's a little different. I think when I was studying science in college and in high school, I really knew I wanted to do something in that field. But once you graduate college, or once you go down a certain route, especially like biology, right? Like there's only so many things you can do. You either pursue a PhD or you work for like the city. And I didn't find those as rewarding to me as I wanted to. And I always wondered, what if? I think that's one thing that a lot of people probably have, is that what if, little itch. That what if, why not me? Why not pursue something? Why not try to be the best version of myself that I can be. And I think that's something that at some point it'll drive you crazy. I'm sure there are many nights. I had many nights where I'm just sitting there and I was just like, man, maybe I should take the MCAT again. Maybe I should apply. Maybe I should try to plan ahead and try to think about the best way I can do this. Why not me? I think that's what. And then in terms of the second aspect of your question, the like what kept me going, I think I'm very fortunate to have a lot of support in my life and a lot of people who, even when I was very down on myself and thinking that maybe I wasn't going to make it, I had people remind me that, hey, you have a lot to offer too. I understand the MCAT was hard, hey, I understand maybe research is not for you, but you have a lot of good qualities. And I think that's why it's important to surround yourself with some people who can really support you. Like I said, no man's an island, and this is that's basically it. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you so much for your question.
Thank you so much for the response. It's very helpful. Go ahead.
I appreciate it.
There's like another question. I'm sorry, but there's another question in the chat about since you're you've been through like a postback program before going to medical school. They wanted to know if there is a benefit to going a postback program versus getting like prerequisite courses for medical school at a community college.
Sure. Yeah. No, I appreciate the question. It's kind of complicated. I think it depends on your circumstance. So if you look back, right? So I graduated college in 2014. I finished my master's program in 2016. At that point, one of my colleagues told me that I lost all academic momentum, right? You're out of school, you haven't taken a course in a while. And I realized at that time, I didn't have all of my courses as well. I didn't have a statistics course. And I remember reading so I highly recommend this when you're applying to school. By the way, a lot of programs, they'll have their like prerequisites on their websites. I realized that a lot of my courses were out of the time window. And so I had to retake courses. And so I think the combination of the courses, I was able to reach my course quota, as well as they had a built-in MCAT prep course that I found pretty helpful as well. I think that's what led me down that route. I don't think it's necessary though. I really don't believe it. I think that at the time it was something that helped me. It gave me some structure where I think that a lot of times I wouldn't have had that kind of structure. And so I think it's very useful. I think the community college system is excellent. I know a lot of people who have had many experiences in college, community colleges, and they're my colleagues here right now at this hospital. I think that if you are self-motivated and you are determined and you can stay on top of what you need to stay on top of, it's an excellent route to go in terms of getting your prerequisites. I would just make sure that your prerequisites, sometimes the courses don't count the same based on certain community colleges versus undergrad. So I would just follow up any questions you have with those little details sometimes they have advisors at these programs that you could email regarding your application. Yeah, I think both are equal. I think that unfortunately postbac programs, they can tend to be expensive. I know there's one in the south or the East Coast. It's like, I think it's Georgetown was one of them. Georgetown it's like $70,000. I don't think that's worth it at all. And so I think if you're able to find something that fits your financial situation, that helps you get all of your prerequisites in line, I think that could be beneficial.
Thank you so much for the question. There's also like another question that's like about academics and they wanted to know how did you deal with some of the academic subjects you found to be more difficult, especially as the non-traditional.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. I think it's so funny. I think if you asked me this question when I was an undergrad, right, I would have given you a completely different answer. I think the way I've learned over the years has completely changed. I used to be a big handwrite every single note thing, and I wouldn't even be paying attention to the presentation. I would just sit there and I would just write down word for word whatever the person's saying. And now I think what I do is I listen more when I take notes, and I really become more involved in, okay, why are they bringing this up? And I think that's been really helpful for my studying. I just want to be very clear, by the way, I was not a good student in undergrad. I was like, maybe I got early, my first couple of semesters, I was like 3.0, and then I really worked to get it higher afterwards, but I wasn't the most talented in terms of my academic career. And I think that's one of the things that's really difficult, right? It's like, you don't know how you study, you don't know how to learn. I think that's probably the biggest strength that I have as a non-traditional student who ended up in medicine, is that I really learned a lot about myself. I really strengthened the way I studied. I found out what worked for me and what didn't work for me. I have more patience now. I understand that, hey, I don't need to write everything down. Okay, they're bringing up this point. Make sure I mark this note and go back to it at a later time. I try to be more present when it comes to courses and classwork now. And I think, yeah, I'm sorry, did that answer the question? Or because I could ramble. Unfortunately, like I said, the half Italian stuff, I could sometimes ramble and talk in a circle. So yeah, let me know if that answered, if there's anything else you want me to talk about.
I would say
that really.
The next question we have is, what is the most valuable advice you've gotten from another doctor?
Oh, wow. I think one of the biggest things that I remember in med school, I had a physician tell me once, like, you're your harshest critic. Like, no one ever views you in the same lens that you view yourself. And so, like I mentioned on one of my previous slides, be kind to yourself, have grace. If you hyper focus on everything that you did in your academic career, maybe you didn't do well in a course. Like, I'll be completely honest, I got a C in a math course in undergrad. You know, I got a C+ in Gen Chem. These are not, if I just defined myself. So if I defined myself with those grades, I would never pursue this. But remember, you're your harshest critic. So have some grace for yourself and be kind to yourself. It gets better, I promise. It's hard still. I just want to let you know, it's hard, but you get better at it.
Thank you for the answer.
You're very welcome.
Go ahead, Angelina.
Like speaking of I guess like academics and like sorry
No, you're doing great. You're doing great.
Like, I'm sorry.
No, okay.
Speaking of how to not beating yourself too much when you have a hiccup like a couple of diagrams and stuff like that, like how did your personal and somebody asked that, like how did your personal and academic life balance look like from college to medical school, because it can change a lot from person to person, and some advice from you would be nice.
So it's completely different. I just want to be very clear with you. When I was a high school student, I played a lot of sports. I still really enjoy sports, but I was a big sports person. I did some theater, actually, believe it or not. I had a bunch of different interests. When I was in college, it was mostly, hey, I'll show up to some classes. I'll take some courses. You know, but I want to be more social. I want to do more fun stuff. You know, college are the best years of your life, yada, yada, yada. At the end of the day, though, you kind of realize that when you really want to achieve something that you want, you know, it really takes focus and it really takes discipline. And for some people, it kind of takes it's a hard learning curve for that. And so what ended up happening was, I think I become more efficient. So I can probably do the same work now that would have taken me an hour. So in 10 minutes now is the same thing that would have taken me 30 minutes or an hour as an undergrad. I think the older you get, the more you're like, okay, time is actually really precious, you know? And I'm sure many of you at some point have shadowed a doctor and they're always running around and they're always busy. And the time, you don't get more time in a day. You just kind of get forced into doing more with your time. And so I just became more efficient. I think it's still very important, though. This is another lesson I really want to focus on, because I think everyone talks about burnout, and I'm sure there's when I was in undergrad, I was burned out, right? You're constantly trying to jump through hoops, trying to, get certain course grades and certain MCAT scores and all these things and letters of recommendation. And you're doing all of these things, right? And you're burning out. The older you get, you become more efficient. And whatever time you do have, you have to prioritize things that make you happy. Okay. So have friends, stay in contact with friends, stay in contact with family, do fun things. You like to hike, go hike once a week, but make it a priority. And I think that's how I changed. I think my work-life balance changed mostly because I got more efficient and I'm now able to maximize the things that I want to do in the little time that I have, which is kind of counterintuitive, but kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah, the only thing that I would add is there's a quote by Teddy Roosevelt, and I put it in the chat. It's called "Man in the Arena." But anything in life, you try something, you do something, you are going to fail. Like failure is life. I mean, and so but it's how you react to those failures and how you overcome them. And some people they get motivated by it and push forward. Some um some get discouraged and whittle away. And so but anything you do in life, and I don't it's you're gonna fail at it, relationships, work, job, school, but it's how you react to it and how you learn from it. And I think what you just mentioned too is that there's this whole thing of the 10,000 hour rule is that for you to be great at anything, you have to do 10,000 hours. So why is college 4 or 5 years is because that's 10,000 hours. Most residencies, 3 years, that's about 10,000 hours. So, all of these things, like you have to build up on it. And, and I think like getting a C in general chemistry, yeah, it's not good, but in the grand scheme of the universe, like, you know, it's not, it's not the end of it, but it's how you recover. You get a B or A in OChem, or you do better in biochem. But in the universe, there's a lot more challenging things like diabetes and heart disease that are much more heavier than failing a test. So that's
I completely agree.
And I'm pretty sure that you could attest to this. There's a lot of people with these walking around hospitals as doctors. We had the head of the UC Health for the entire state of California. She said she got a D in organic chemistry and had to retake it, and now she's, so a lot of people have failed, but it's how they recovered.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to make one little comment on that as well. I still am failing. I just want to let you know, even in the hospital every day, I'm learning how to make sure I put the right orders in. I'm making sure I'm doing the right exams. I'm still making changes. I'm still putting the wrong things in and learning. And that's part of life, though. And that's part of your journey. You're not going to be great until you go through the stuff that makes you great.
Thank you so much for sharing like your advice and your feelings because like failures are really, I guess like it can be really scary and challenging, but sometimes like it can also be like a beacon of hope for a lot of people. And
We didn't hear your question because you got muted. Um, your internet just froze up again. Hello? Yeah, your internet you're broken up.
It's totally okay. Yeah, just type your question into the chat and we can answer.
So I have George asked me to ask you about Dr. Fortansky.
Fortinays. Okay, so Dr. Fortnay. So George and I, we go way back, for better or for worse, right, George? I met George when I was at USC. He was a undergrad doing research in the same lab where I was the master's student. And there was one day he came to me and he asked me if I knew anyone that he could shadow. And I was very fortunate. You know, I had my own experience with someone near my hometown. His name is Dr. Fortunates. He's a neurologist. And like I said, I don't have a medical background. I don't have anyone in my family who is a doctor. I have a distant uncle, but I'm not close with him at all. But outside of that, I have no other people who are physicians or no physicians. And so I was fortunate. I met Dr. Fortnays one day. He allows students with them. And one day I recommended George. And George and I both worked with him at some point. And I'm pretty sure he can tell you all the amazing things he learned and all the valuable lessons that I'm sure he's using to his advantage as a medical student currently about to go through match. And so I learned a lot through my experiences, and Dr. Fortnite is one of the most valuable mentors I've ever had. And so make sure you find your mentors, guys.
Yeah, you're still broken up.
It's okay. And internet, I was just dealing with internet issues right before the call. It's okay. Yeah, just type it in the chat and we can answer it. Let me know how I could help.
I'll go ahead and read the next question that's in the Q&A. So it says, I'm a community college student now, majored in bio. Are the steps for medical school after community college? What's the best time to write the MCAT?
Sure. So I think this is a personal question. So you need to know, how long do you think it takes for you to do well on the MCAT? Unfortunately, the MCAT's like the great funnel. Just like in medical school, the great funnel is the United States medical licensing exams. And so in order to get into medical school, you have to meet a threshold, a general score. A lot of times you can score less than, there are stories of people who score less than 505 or 500 or less than 500, but a lot of times those are very rare circumstances. And so I think the best thing you can do is, if it takes 3 months for you to study, take 3 months. If it takes 6 months, take 6 months. If you've taken it once already, make sure the next time you take it, you crush it. You have some kind of jump. I think that if you are able to financially support it, finding whether it's a Kaplan or a Berkeley review, those are the types of things that might be useful to look into to provide some structure. When I was a undergrad, or even the years after undergrad, I found out that I'm kind of chaotic with my studying and I wasn't really focusing. I didn't understand that I needed that structure. So if that's something that appeals to you, I would definitely pursue it. Right now is the most time you're ever going to have to study for this test. So I would probably take it as soon as you can. When you're comfortable, I would start studying as soon as you can. Sorry, not take it as soon as you can. Start studying as soon as you can. But the MCAT is only a portion of the application. It's an important portion, but it's still a portion. And so one of the things I also want to recommend is find something that you're interested in. Like whatever you're interested in, do it and do it to its fullest. If you want to be an Eagle Scout, or you are an Eagle Scout and you want to continue to do volunteer work, do that. Make sure you are applying yourself in the volunteer world. Volunteer at soup kitchens, help with the underserved, do stuff that makes you fulfilled, makes you happy. It doesn't really matter what you do. It's how you talk about it when you're being interviewed, and it's how you present it on the application. And so you can say, hey, I was, 4-year, for example, I played football for 4 years of my life. Okay, that's one way to put it. Or you can say, hey, like the lessons I learned on the football field directly correlate to my study habits, dedication that I learned, the attention to detail when it came to running plays on offense, the same thing. You could always present it. So I just want to make sure you're focusing on your MCAT, because that is very important. And I would probably take at least 3 months to study for it. But also, don't just get trapped in the MCAT thing. There's other things you should spend your time with as well. Because a very good MCAT score with no volunteering, with no other experiences, could also be kind of not a red flag, but it could kind of be difficult to discuss when all your peers have a more balanced application.
Thank you. And our next question we have in the chat is, why did you decide to do internal medicine? And any advice for people who don't know what they want to do in medicine?
I love this question because I have this talk every day in the hospital still. Okay. A lot of people that I know in school, they were, oh my gosh, I worked on an ambulance. And the moment that I had my first ever experience with so and so, I knew I wanted to become an emergency medicine doctor. Or, I had this traumatic thing happen to me when I was a kid. And, the surgeon, just the way he worked with his hands, it made me realize I wanted to be a surgeon. I never had anything like that. And so, like many of you guys out there, and it's funny enough, a lot of people I know from medical school and now into residency, that's not a prerequisite. I think that you kind of find what you like within the field. Like I knew I wanted to become a doctor. At first I thought, hey, maybe surgery. And then you kind of look at my hands and you realize maybe not the most skilled hands. Maybe I'm not able to suture. George can attest to this. George is our surgeon in the making. But yeah, you kind of learn what you're good at. And what I really realized, what I liked most about medicine was like the cerebral thinking of it. Like, okay, we have a bunch of organ systems. We have this presenting symptom. How are all these symptoms working in conjunction? Sorry, how are all these organs in the body working together to create this symptom? Or thinking about adapting to new plans and just the hospital life itself is really fascinating to me. So I knew I wanted to do medicine for that reason. But funny enough, once you're in medical school, like the first branch you go down is, do you want to be a surgeon or do you want to be in some kind of it's like surgery or not surgery. And early on, I knew I didn't want to do surgery. And then once you go through your rotations and you have all these experiences, you kind of realize, wow, I want to follow stuff that I feel like I have qualities that I could succeed with, right? Like I like the cerebralness, I like the planning, I like the organization that's in internal medicine, but also it's diverse. I could end up doing things later in life that's way different than what I trained for because it's such a diverse specialty. So that's for the most part. Yeah, sorry if that was a ramble, but I have this talk every day. It's actually hilarious that it's brought up.
Yeah, and all I know is that you changed your mind 7,322 times from your first day of medical school until you hit your residency application. So, and it's going to change. Like, I mean, I know like people like say, oh, I want to be a pediatrician. And they're like, nope, I don't like kids. And they do something else. Or people say, I want to be a neurosurgeon and end up doing psychiatry. So you're not going to know at this point and it's going to change. So, yeah.
Yeah. Just be open to all opportunities. Another little thing that this reminds me of is I had a mentor in medical school who told me, don't swim against the current. If you're good at something and you feel like you're fulfilled in it, maybe that's where you need to go. I found that very helpful.
Another question that came up in the chat is, since you are a non-traditional student, it might have been a different age from your peers in medical school. Were there any dynamics that you found uncomfortable or weird? Or what about interacting with attendings and stuff who might be closer in age to you rather than your other co-residents?
I think maybe on the surface it could be a little bit difficult. You may not have as much in common with some of the other people in the class, like at least socially, right? But at the same time, you're all there for the same reason. A lot of times I realize that my best friends in medical school were 3, 4, 5, 6 years younger than me when I started. And so even though there might have been a little bit of a gap in the music that we listen to or some of the pop culture stuff that we talk about, I think there's like a baseline level of like respect and a baseline level of like, hey, we're all in this together. We're all kind of doing the same things. And I didn't find age to be a particularly big issue. And even when it comes to interacting with attendings or interacting with other people who we may be in similar age with, who are your superior in the like medical hierarchy, I think for the most part, people realize, hey, you're all there for the same reasons, and just because you're a little bit older, I don't think that's a real big issue, to be honest. And people are all over the place age-wise. I remember when I first was looking into medical school, the average like age was like 23 or 24. And now that average age is like climbed up to like 25, 26. I'm not sure what it is now, but it wouldn't surprise me if
27.4.
27.4. See, that age is only going up this way because it's getting harder and harder to get in. So just because you're a certain age, don't let that discourage you. I think you can make really fulfilling relationships with people despite the age.
Yeah, we had someone who started med school at 50 and she's having a lot of fun. She's not only like older than some of the attendings, but like some of her attendings were old enough to be her children. So it's
It happened.
So it's not like if it's an issue, it may be an issue for you, but I don't think most other people would have that issue. I've uh worked with residents that were, I actually had um, um a resident who her, I think, niece was her chief resident, I think. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just people, you do what you need to do, and you're gonna get old no matter what, and just might as well do something you enjoy doing. So
I completely agree. Completely agree.
All right, another question we have is, I'm the oldest of 6. I'm currently 25 and I'm working as a medical scribe and taking full-time classes. How did you manage your time balancing work, school, and your personal life?
You have to find a balance. I think that anyone who tries to hyper focus on any one aspect is going to detract from everything else. And so that balance can be different for everyone else. That it may be different for you, right? So for example, like I said, there's only a finite amount of time in a day, right? So if you're doing scribe work, that's a certain amount of time. If you're into fitness and you want to go to the gym, that's a certain time. Your family obligations is a certain amount of time. Those times may differ during the week, right? Like maybe on Monday you're not scribing, so you're able to do more. Just make sure you maximize your time in all aspects so that they at least average out to be very similar. I don't think there's anything wrong with it right now. You're going through a little bit challenging time, right? You're taking classes, you're taking you're doing your scribe work. Like all these things are really important. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, a lot of these applications have filters online where they look for numbers of hours, right? They're like, oh, this person did 100 hours of research. This person has 100 hours or whatever, 200, 300 hours. And so unfortunately, you have to put the hours in, but just try your best to be more efficient with stuff that otherwise take time. So for example, like the other day, I was very fortunate. Once you guys are all residents, you'll understand. Once I got off like 45 minutes early for a shift, and I was very fortunate. I got a haircut. I went to the grocery store, and I was able to go home and answer some emails. And all that stuff is stuff that I would have waited until my 1 day off or my 2 days off to do. And now I have a little bit more free time. And so just don't wait to do stuff. I think you'll find the balance that works for you. But if you can do stuff in that moment, like really quickly and get it out of your way soon, I think that will open up a lot more time. And I think you'd be surprised how much you can get done.
Another person was asking about if you do, what is your opinion on fast track BS or MD combo programs?
So I think it's complicated. Are you talking about like the dual degree programs or the ones that
any of the the accelerated paths?
Sure. Yeah, I think so. As someone who took a couple of years to figure out what he wanted to do, I think that it wouldn't have worked for me. I think that if I was in like an accelerated program, I probably would have ended up hating it because I didn't have enough time going through other experiences to realize what I really wanted to do. There aren't as many accelerated programs. And unfortunately, once you get into medical school, there's like the first 3 years are really complicated and really hard. But then like the fourth year, there's some time where you have a little bit more free time. But even though people think like, oh, maybe the accelerated programs, like you get into the field faster, you save time. I don't think that makes you a better clinician. I don't think you're more prepared. I think you might get more burnt out. But like I said, that's just because I can't imagine doing it myself because I didn't realize, I didn't really turn my stuff around in terms of my schooling until I was about 25. And so I don't know. I I never was able to do it. If it works for some people, I know some people up when I was in medical school in Sacramento, I know some people who did accelerated paths. There were some people who came from like the 3+4 programs and things like that. And I don't know. I don't have a great answer for that. I'm sorry I didn't have more on that. I know for me it wouldn't have worked. And I think that's the beauty of this, right? It's like different things will work for different people. If you think it would work for you, great, but I do think that you need to have built-in time off. If you went all the way through without taking some time to really focus on yourself, to focus on like good habits and what makes you you outside of your career, I think you'll end up resenting the field. I know a lot of people who do that in residency where they went all the way through and now they're here and they're just like, wow, I'm already in here. I never had time off. So I don't know, not to get too, serious about it, but that's one thing I recommend taking some time off.
The next question we have for you is, did you ever consider a DIY postback?
Say that one more time, sorry.
Sorry. Someone had asked, did you ever consider a DIY postback?
A DIY postback. I'm not super familiar with the term, but is that just something, it's not like through a program, you kind of like
do it
your
yourself.
Do it yourself.
Yeah. I think there are many ways. I think the structure that came with the program that I did was really beneficial to me. If you think you could provide your own structure that way, by all means, it's something that I think I would consider. The other thing too that's really difficult to kind of replicate is that, if you do it at a school, like another program. So for example, if you went to like the Georgetown postback, or I know there's one in Boston and there's a couple scattered all over the place. Like being a foot on that campus, like being able to step on that campus, talk to people, meet people, you become more than just an application. You're able to talk to people, who the person is that is interviewing, the one who's going through your application, and you're no longer just, David. You're, oh, that's David. I know David. And so that's one thing that I think that might be hard. But in terms of all the prereqs and stuff, it still might be very valuable. I've never done it, so I can't speak with 100% confidence. I'm going to charge my phone. Give me 1 second. There are chargers everywhere in this hospital. That's so funny.
All right. Another question we have in the chat is, between a mentorship, volunteering at a hospital, and an internship, which program do you think someone will gain more insight and valuable knowledge if they want to go into the medical field?
So I think all the insights from each one of those things are unique. And I don't think one's better than the other. I think they're all different for different aspects of your application. So for example, like if you're going to do an internship, like for example, let's just talk about scribing, right? Scribing is a unique field. You're able to understand what goes into the charting behind medicine. You are in the hospital with the physician, with the nurses, understanding every little nuance to what's going on in the hospital visit. That's unique, right? There are things, though, that you can't learn in that experience that you would learn in something like having a mentor. So, for example, there are a lot of things that I talk about with one of my mentors in the medical field that is, it's a lot more nuanced than what you would just see by pure experience. It's things you really have to think about and things you have to kind of go through yourself and then talk to someone else who's gone through it. It's not something that you just like Google, But I think that kind of goes back to another comment I was talking about earlier about just balance. I don't think you can just focus on one thing. And so if you are as efficient as you possibly can be, you're able to do all of that stuff. And you can find a way to make it work. And even if it's maybe, 70% internship and 10% mentorship, I guarantee you 10% mentorship is better than 0%. And funny enough, those percentages will change over time too. Maybe the days you're not scribing, it's going to be 100% mentorship or 100%, volunteer work, or hey, maybe I have this idea and I wanted to start a company, or hey, like I have a friend of mine who's starting a website and I'm really interested in helping. There are a million things you can do and a million things you can learn. It really applies to how you perceive it and how you can take something from it.
We have a couple of questions.
Can I make
Sorry.
one more comment on that? Sorry, just as a thing. Having deep, meaningful experiences lead to deep, meaningful letters of recommendation. I can't tell you enough. I've read a lot of applications before, and I've read a lot of letters of recommendation before. I know some people who are writing it for some of the medical students that rotate to my facility, and there is so little that you can get from a letter that says, "Oh, this person shows up on time. This person is really nice. This one treats my patients like with respect." Or, "Hey, I had this really difficult case, and this person went above and beyond to figure out that their kidney wasn't working, really highlighted it, and then took that time to present to me this finding that was really like pertinent at the time. It's something I would have glossed over." Like, obviously that's a little bit more of a kind of an over the top example, but having a deep, meaningful experience will lead to way better letters. And if you're a program director and you read thousands of these letters, they could read right through all the kind of fluffiness that comes in some of these personal statements and some of these letters of recommendation. So just try to be genuine and try to be yourself.
The next sort of set of questions just more pertain to you. So first of all, why did you pick medical school instead of any other healthcare related field? And then sort of second part to that is, why did you pick the specialty that you're in right now versus the other specialties?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I should have been more explicit earlier, but yeah, I'll talk about the first question. So actually, I'll talk the second question first. So why the specialty that I'm in right now? I realized at an early spot in medical school that I didn't enjoy surgery. A lot of people get this adrenaline rush. They go to the OR, they scrub in, meaning that they scrub their hands with special soap and they put special gloves on, and they're sitting there and they're incredibly excited to start getting to the table, and you do all the drapes over the patient, and then you start working on the access point and you're cutting open and doing all this fun stuff. I absolutely hated it. I always thought I would like it, but it's one of those things you wouldn't have done until you went in there. And I vividly remember there was a day where I was in a surgery and it was like a 5.5 hour surgery. And the whole time I was with an attending who was asking me questions about anatomy. And this was like the case started at like 3 o'clock. And I just remember being so tired. And I was just like, I don't know how people do this, you know? And it was the idea of surgery that I really liked. But when you actually came to the actuality of it, you start realizing, man, that's maybe not for me, you know? And then as for medicine, one of the things I had a mentor tell me once was, find your people. When you rotate in medical school through all your different clerkships and different little rotations in the different specialties in medicine, you go through OB-GYN, so like women's health, you go through pediatrics, children's medicine, you do surgery, you do family medicine, like geriatrics, all the way to children, right? You do all these beautiful clerkships. And this might be dumbing it down or watering it down, but if you don't feel like good with the vibes of the culture, the vibes of the people you're with, then maybe it's not something you'll connect with, because those people end up becoming your colleagues, and that's the field that you end up being, and that becomes your culture. And if you don't like the vibes of it, then maybe it's something you should consider. And I really like the vibes of all the internal medicine people I worked with, and the diversity and the thinking aspect of it, and the not using my hands thing was very interesting. But in internal medicine too, you could also use your hands. A lot of people are proceduralists. You can end up becoming a intensivist or someone who works in the ICU, and they're putting in chest tubes and central lines, these IVs that go into really big blood vessels in your body, like really high intensity stuff. And so you could find what makes you happy in internal medicine. It's just as diverse as it's the most diverse field. And so I think that's what really drew me. And I'm sorry, could you repeat the first aspect of the question?
What made you decide medicine specifically as opposed to any of the other healthcare related fields like nursing, physician's assistant, things like that?
Sure. So I think so when I was coming up, nurse practitioners and physician's assistants weren't as incorporated, I feel like, in the medical hierarchy. A lot of times it was like doctor, nurse, and then occasionally there was like a PA. Now there's a lot more. I might have considered it more now if it was more popular like it is now versus back then. But I don't know. I like the autonomy of it. You know, I don't know. One of the things, at least we'll see it until one of the things that's happening is there's a lot more. So a lot of places, the nurse practitioner or the physician assistant still has to run by everything to the physician. And so it's usually like they're kind of like an arm of the physician, right? They're able to do all these things, but they just want to make sure they run it by someone, right? I've always found a lot of fulfillment being able to work on things myself, and like thinking about things and being like, okay, I want to do this, and this is my rationale. And I always thought that autonomy was something that's really fascinating to me, and it kind of made me feel like maybe I should try to pursue that level in that field. But at the same time, there's more autonomy than ever now to be a nurse practitioner, to be a physician's assistant. We need more of everything in this field. So if one of those fields really appeals to you and you find someone, a mentor in that field that you really like, I say pursue it. I say the thing is too is that when you're as of right now, maybe later, a lot of the specialties. So if you want to do like cardiothoracic surgery or neurosurgery, there are some people I know a neurosurgery PA who works at our hospital, and they're helpful and they do a lot of the opening and the closing, but a lot of the most difficult stuff that still goes in the hands of the physician. And so if you really want to be that person and you want to do all the really high specialty stuff until the rest of the opportunities come up for the nurse practitioners and the PAs, which it is happening, there's been a lot of increase and there's a lot more autonomy. It might not be something that you want to pursue, especially if you're one of those super hyper competitive people that that I have to be this surgeon, I have to do this, or I'm not going to be happy. Then I would just at least try to go for that.
Thank you. And another question we have is, any tips for getting involved in research?
I emailed thousands of people in my lifetime, and I've got ghosted by almost thousands. It was just a handful of people who ended up responding. So one of the things that's funny is that it's a two-way street, right? Like you need research, and people who are doing research need people who are going to help them, right? And a lot of times volunteers are free labor, right? They're able to do stuff, and they don't have to worry about giving you this like huge salary to work on stuff, or you don't have to be like a PhD. A lot of times it's a lot of just like basic stuff that you just need more hands. And so I used to go, for example, if you're in Los Angeles, right? And just say you're interested in, let's see, we could just say clinical stuff, right? So like, hey, I'm really interested in people who do research on the heart, right? You can call, sorry, not call, you can go onto the website for Cedars-Sinai, for UCLA, for USC, UC Irvine, all these big medical campuses that have these big, robust research centers, and look at their website. They always post the people who are doing research, and they always publish research articles. And I was never able to read those like early on. Like the more you read them, the better you get. But like if you find something that's interesting, when I was at I would just cold email them. I would just immediately say, hey, thank you so much for your time, for answering this email. I'm so and so. I'm a student at blah blah blah. I'm really interested in this field. It really means a lot to me because of this, 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 and this. I'd be happy to work in your lab. If you had any opportunities available, please let me know. And you'll send 100 of those, and you might get 1 or 2 back. And those 1 and 2 opportunities are 2 opportunities you would have never had if you didn't send those 100, right? So don't be discouraged if you get cold, if you get no responses or whatever. Just keep emailing. There's hundreds of researchers in your town. There's hundreds, I guarantee you, especially at a lot of these universities, and they need research and they need people to help. And so cold email. Cold email. That's how I got my first. Oh, sorry, go for it.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that's how I got half of my research experiences was cold emailing. And then fortunately, you get to know these people. Once you find one, they might be able to refer you to another lab, or hey, I know so-and-so if you're interested in this. And it's a web.
Yeah, so we have on November 17th, we have the director of the NIH training, and that's summer programs and postback all the way from high school all the way to postback. And she'll come and talk about, and they pay you like, $6,000 plus fly you out and do a bunch of other stuff. So, like come and ask her about that because she's spoken to us last year as well, but she gives you a lot of good nuance and good skills to how to approach and ask people. And so and I think she even like last year provided, if you look through our past events, she even provided some sample emails on how you should email and address them. And you could also watch the video too. But she's speaking in November. And then we also had like a couple weeks ago, we had a summer program. But summer programs are like they want you there, they're gonna pay you, and they have set aside time. A lot of times when you email professors, they may not have time to train you. And it's certainly if you don't have any skills. Now, let's say, hey, I did a summer program at NIH or anywhere else. Most of the time, you would actually get those people in those labs who say, hey, I'm moving back home. More likely than not, they know people and they will connect you with them, but you gotta have to make that first connection. So this is a plug for November 17th to show up. Because y'all are asking about research, and it's like there's a lot of research and people that actually do the day-to-day stuff. Those are the people you should connect with and tell you the instructions. Now, how he did it was, he was in a. I think you started doing research when you were doing your master's, right?
I started doing medical research and as a master's, but I was doing like environmental stuff and plants and spiders at undergrad.
Yep. And so that's how and I can tell you this right now, if you want to make, 3D hearts, that's not the first project that you're going to work on. Just kind of throw that out there. You're going to have to work your way up. So it's kind of like you got to put in the time and have people refer you to, what is it like it's kind of like running the 100 meters or the marathon or whatever you want to call it. You're not going to show up to the Olympics and let you run. That's not going to be your first race. You're going to have to do hundreds of other trainings and hours before you could get to the big show. So, or football, your first game is not going to be the Super Bowl. It's going to be, so.
My first ever research experience was counting bugs on a plant when I was in undergrad. And I was able to actually publish research by counting bugs and where they were on the plant and then making this hypothesis and all this stuff. And then that led me all the way down the path to neural stem cells and understanding how the brain regenerates. And so that's, as you can imagine, that's a huge leap, right? From counting, simple counting essentially to that. So yeah, there's always a way to get there. You just got to make the first move. I completely agree.
Another question we have in the chat for you is, what are the most important skills that you need as a doctor?
There's so many, but I don't think there's a single thing that's greater than the other. I think they're all really important. I think time management's really important. Communications skills is incredibly important. I always tell people like medicine's a human business. And so you have to be able to communicate not just with the patients, but also your colleagues and the staff that you're working with. And it's really a relationship business. If you really want to care for the people you're caring for, you're going to have a basic relationship with them, and you'll be able to get a better history from patients. You'll be able to have more focused, more nuanced understanding of what's going on in their life, and you could treat them better. And so I would say those two. Resilience, absolutely. I think that there are a million hoops you have to jump through. And every time you go through one, you kind of learn, okay, I can do this. I can get through it. It's just another hoop. Like, for example, you want to hear something fun? So I just scheduled my United States medical licensing exam, step 3. It's a 2-day exam. It's 8 hours on one day, 8 hours on the other day. And to me, I'm over here thinking, wow, that's fine. I'll just take it and I'll be done with it and I'll be good to go. But you don't just get there. You kind of have to have the resilience and understanding, hey, it's just another hoop. It's just another thing. And you have to have the confidence in yourself to get there. So I think those are the big things. And I think communication's lost a lot of time. You really have to focus on being able to understand how to communicate with others, because it's a huge aspect of the field.
Another question, more of a personal question from me. You were talking about how when you're going through your research experiences, you really realized that it wasn't necessarily a career path that you wanted to go down. And I think research experience is really stressed in the medical application. Like, everyone needs so many hours of research, and some people like myself, I think, are finding that it's more of a box to tick rather than a really like love for the field. So how do you sort of pitch that in your interviews when you're talking about your research experience, like acknowledging that you gained valuable skills while also stressing that it wasn't necessarily like your most loved experience?
I think this is a fantastic question, and it's something that I struggled with all the way up until about the last year or last year and a half of medical school. So as you mentioned, right, a lot of times people look at research as something that is a box to check, right? I need this many hours, I need this many publications, this many poster presentations, and it doesn't stop once you get into medical school. When you fill out your residency applications, there's this whole page and they ask you, hey, how many posters have you presented? Hey, what research have you done? And a lot of the surgery specialties, a lot of the really competitive specialties want you to do basic research. There was someone that I knew who published in Nature, which is a huge research journal, right? And that was a huge thing that she brought up, right, on our application. And it led to some of her success for sure. But would you believe me if I told you there was research in medicine that's outside of, mouse research or cell research? The answer is yes. I think the single most valuable thing you could do when it comes to research is find something you believe in, find something you're interested in, and find something that you can do for more than 3 months. If you can find something that you really like and you're able to keep in contact with the person and you work for 2 years on a project, that's going to look so much better than doing 3 months here, 2 months here. Hey, I counted cells. Hey, I helped with, mounting this tissue onto slides. Hey, I did this. Versus, hey, I really was interested. So for example, this is something, not to plug George in again. George is an excellent, excellent medical student. He's an excellent friend of mine. He introduced me to an idea called language concordance. And I wasn't aware of this. It's basically, there's a huge issue in medicine right now, right? Where there are massive pitfalls in medicine provided to people when the care isn't provided to them in their native language. And there are hundreds of studies being published right now on the idea of language concordance. Hey, how can we improve providing care to people just by focusing on the language that they have? It's no longer useful enough just to have a translator. It's more important that this person themselves speaks the language of the person that they're treating, right? That's a whole research field. And you become so fascinated in it, right, that you're able to talk about it. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, I spent hours talking about it collectively on my interviews for residency. And it's something that I didn't even know I was interested in, because I was always told, hey, make sure you do your science research, right? Hey, find this cardiac tissue, this heart tissue in a dish. Yeah, let's focus on that, even if it didn't appeal to you. So find something, whether it's in, maybe health systems, maybe it's in language. There's a million ways you can find research that fits medicine that isn't traditional medicine. And I think that if you're able to do it consistently, you'll have a really strong letter of recommendation, and it's interesting. I guarantee you there's research out there that none of your peers are doing. And that's the stuff that's going to come up on interviews. Sorry, this is a whole new field to me. And I'm so strongly opinionated on this. And I think that anything you can do that makes you stick out, that's genuine, is the strongest thing you can do for your application. Outside of course, like the doing well in school and the MCAT, but like, that's how you stick out. Find a project that you really like and focus on it.
All right, another question we have is they're telling us that they're a non-traditional student. They graduated in 2021 as a pre-vet, and they're currently working in Postback, working towards applying to medical school. And they just wanted to know, they had struggles with feeling behind their peers. They didn't feel like they were up to par. Did you ever feel this way throughout your journey?
Every day that thought comes up into my head. It never ends. You always will find that. If you look for it, you'll always find it. There's always going to be someone out there who scores in the nth percentile on the MCAT, or there's always someone out there who, hey, the other day I got asked, hey, what antibiotic do you think would cover this, 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 and this? And I didn't know. And one of my colleagues knew, like right off the top of his head. And I was like, oh no, like how far behind am I that I didn't even know that answer? But you know what? You learn, right? I think the single most important thing is to keep your blinders on through this whole process, okay? When you're applying to medical school, when I was a undergrad, there are people who got into medical school right away. There are people who got in a couple years later, and there are people who are like my age who are many years later, right? This upcoming spring is the 10-year anniversary for my college graduation. Like, think about that, 10 years, right? I'm getting old. I know. But anyways, I think you just got to really focus on the road ahead. Try not to think about other people around you. It's inevitably going to happen. But just remember, a lot of times what you see in other people is their best moments. Whereas you only see the good and the bad. You don't see the bad that other people have as well. And I'm telling you, there are moments where you will look like a brilliant person in front of someone else and you'll feel really good. And there are going to be moments where you're going to think you're the dumbest person that's ever walked this earth, right? But I'm telling you, it doesn't matter, right? Progress is progress. Small progress is progress. Try your best not to focus on other people though. Like legitimately, like throughout the entire process from medical school, like all the way up until medical school, there's always going to be someone who scored better than you on the MCAT. It's just a test, right? There's always going to be someone who got, into a better program or a, more competitive specialty or, are better at this and this. And so what? The world needs a lot of doctors, the world doesn't need, every single 10 out of 10 person, a doctor can be a 10 out of 10 in every other aspect that's really important. And you can learn the rest. You can look things up. I'm telling you, try not to focus on other people. I know it's hard, but I'm really trying to emphasize that.
The final question that has come up in the Q&A, if no one else adds anymore, is could you talk a bit about how you funded your medical education and other educational experiences and what that sort of looks like for you now, like sort of managing that financial side of it?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I didn't hear the first part.
Yeah, sorry. So once someone's looking to know what are some good ways to go about funding your medical education because it can be expensive, so just how the management of the finances.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the realities of this field is that people get into hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. You're not the first person to ever go through this, and you're not going to be the last one. The field's only getting more and more expensive, unfortunately. But fortunately, hopefully we'll get to a point where, there'll be maybe medical students will start getting paid for work, right? Maybe residents will start getting paid more. Maybe there's not as much financial stress. But until then, I think the best thing you can do, at least in your early stages before you get into school, is try to maybe do a part-time job. Try to maybe tutor. I know a lot of people who tutor to help save some money. But unfortunately, like I just told you that I just told you that excuse me, sorry, Friday. I just signed up for step 3. That test was $1,000 to sign up. $1,000 to take a 2-day test, right? Like the privilege of taking a 2-day test. Unfortunately, it's just how it is. And I think what you really should focus on is before you get into school, try to save as much money as you can. Try, make decent financial decisions. I wouldn't like buy a house or do something really like financially like significant because you're going to need money elsewhere for like tuition. I also would say don't be too stressed about financial aid and don't be stressed about loans. I know it's really scary, but if you have 200, just say for example, you have $300,000 in student debt. Okay. That sounds like a lot. And with interest, it is a significant amount of money, right? It's an investment because you will make good enough money to pay that off in a chunk of time that's not insignificant. You can pay it off. I know some physicians who pay off their entire student debt in the first like 6 to 8 years after they graduate residency. If you really think about it that way, it's an investment, right? And so I don't know. I wouldn't be afraid of it. It's an unfortunate reality of the field. And I think the best thing you could do is try to if you're going to do the loan route, try to find loans that are competitive, at least interest rate wise, and try to not get too focused on it because you'll eventually pay it back. It's as much as it's like a faith thing, like, oh, it's just going to happen. It's part of how it is.
Yeah, and I think the money part of it is can be stressful, but the nice thing is in about 2 years, people are going to be throwing money to hire folks that are done with residency. Um, Unemployment is so low among physicians that they don't even keep track of it. And actually, in a few months, we'll have the CEO of the Permanente group giving a talk and talk about all the stuff to try to recruit physicians. So you're kind of like, uh, like a, trained thoroughbred or quarterback or whatever you want to call it in sport. You have something that's important, your physician degree, your residency training. So you get skills that people are looking for. And there is good money. I mean, and then there's also, if you want to go in the underserved area, California has a program that will give you $300,000 if you spend. I mean, one of my friends, he was a hand surgeon, and he decided to set up his practice in Fresno, and he got a $300,000 check to pay off his debt, and they were doing it for dentists as well. And um, it's kind of like an investment. Like if you want to start a business, you got to put some money down. You want to go buy a house, you got to put, so everything costs money, and it's just an investment that you're making in yourself and in your education, and no one's going to take it away from you. Once you have that, they're not going to say, hey, it's yours. You could choose to work, 100 hours a week when you're done. You could choose to, I mean, I know some doctors that only work 30 hours a week. So, you have that autonomy and that freedom to do whatever you want to do, and do the things. And like I said, I have a lot of friends that are physicians, and none of them are starving. They all drive really nice cars, and they have, bought homes and travel, and so yeah, so it is stressful, but there's a thousand reasons why you should not go into medicine. It could be that, you don't like blood, or you don't like putting the time, or there's a lot but like the money of it shouldn't be a concern, because you're going to make enough that you're going to pay for it. And but it is stressful, and it's, but like I said, I always ask doctors when we bring them on here, it's like, with all this debt, have you starved? Have you, and all of them, none of them have starved so far. So
Yeah, no, I agree. It could be overwhelming at first, but like we're mentioning, it's a job that's a recession-proof job. There's never going to be enough doctors for the amount of people that exist in this world, and you'll always be having a very fulfilling career, which I think is another aspect that you can't pay enough money for.
anyone else have any questions? Oh, George is here. I didn't know George. Oh wow. We're gonna bring you in as a panelist. Um, but anyways, I don't know where he is. Oh, he's in the car driving.
I'm on the Uber, so I'm good. David, it's good to see you. You have been so inspiring. For everyone who's here, he's one of the greatest people I know. He is the person that I've called crying at night, because when medical school gets really tough, David's the one person that I have in my corner. And I think it's just a really huge privilege to be able to see and hear from you now that you're a resident. And God, it's been such a long ride, and I'm so proud of you. So proud of you.
So George, why don't you introduce yourselves?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm George. I'm a medical student now in New York, applied for residency. David was my grad student in lab about 10 years ago. And when you talk about a mentor, that's David. He was the person, David, you're doing this right. How can I get it? How can I get there? What were the steps that you took? And when I said Jubin asked about Dr. Fortnace, Dr. Fortnace was the guy David hooked me up with, and he treated the Pope, treated all these amazing people. And there's one thing that stuck with me this whole time, and it's don't ever look down on anyone unless you're helping them up. And David, I don't know if you remember that, but that, when I think of that line, that's David. And so, it's good to be back with everyone, but, don't look down on anyone unless you're helping them up. That's David. And that's David until the day he dies. He's a mentor through and through. I'm going to get emotional talking about it, but he's the best friend, even when we get really busy and we talk once a month, like I couldn't ask for a better best friend, and so I'm just so grateful to be able to see you do this.
George has always been there. The feeling's completely mutual. There is no way I would be here without George, period. And I'm sure you guys will all find your George at one point in your life. Okay. Just keep working hard and be nice to the students that you work with in these labs. You never know how much influence they'll have on your life. Because George was that for me, and I'm sure you'll find your own George in your own lives.
All right.
Jeevan, I hope that answers the question.
It's good seeing you.
Yeah, I didn't know you were here. We have one more question. Sheikh, do you want to ask that question?
Sure. The question is, how can I explore medicine if I am unsure if it's really for me? I'm interested, but I feel like I'm not competent for it or know whether I'm like fit for it or not.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult because all the things that you do, right? Like the shadowing, the like talking to people, it's only a fraction. So it's always going to be a risk, right? It's always going to be something that you're not fully sure of until you're in it. But I do think there's little things that you could learn about yourself on whether or not it's a good field for you. So if you like to be challenged, if you are someone who is constantly trying to be the best version of themselves, you want to push through and break barriers. These are all like very cliche things, but I really do think that being a physician is all of that. I think that if you really want to, in a more like reality type of way, try to shadow as much as you can. And not just like these, like, go to find places where you could shadow where you're really finding people who are working really good hours. Because at the end of the day, right, there's always going to be those people where they work like, like you said, like 20, 30 hours a week, and they've already made their career. And now they're just kind of in it to stay busy. Find some people, find some younger doctors to shadow. And then just talk to people. I think a lot of people really enjoy talking about this field. I could talk about it forever. Like I said, the half Italianness is coming out. I might start doing this, I think it's something that get out there, experience it. Don't just think about it. You have to experience it. So I think shadowing is the best way though for now. And then talk to people in the field, and who knows, maybe we'll have the fortunate reality of being able to pursue medical school. And once you're in medical school, it's going to be a whole new level. And even as a medical student, you don't really know. And then even as a resident, you don't really know. And then once you become an attending or you're in your own practice or whatever, then you'll have a lot more complete understanding. But it's always going to be a risk. And just to stop you right there too, you are competent. I don't want to hear this "I'm not competent" stuff. Okay. Unfortunately, we are our biggest critics. All right. And there are people out there who feel the same way. I felt the same way at one point in my life. And now I'm over here and I'm treating a panel of patients right now. I never thought I'd be able to do this if you asked me this 10 years ago. You never know what you could accomplish. Seriously, not to be cliche, but I really do believe that.
Yeah, I put a link that we had a talk on how to do clinical experience, and there's like some PowerPoint the ways to approach it. There's some tactics you could do, reaching out some of the local places or going to a hospital. So there's a lot of steps to do it. And then the competent part, yeah, I mean, that's, and I think I've heard this from a surgeon, is that even if you're fully trained and everything, you have somebody's life in your hand, and you should be a little on your toes, not afraid or fear, but I guess you should be, you should have a little bit, because somebody's life is in your hand. And if you're totally like cocky and totally self-assured, you probably should not be treating somebody's life, because there should always be that thing in your gut. I work in the ER as a tech, so I always have this gut and feeling in my gut that something can go wrong, and you just have to be able to anticipate it. And it is an incredible place to be. Like, somebody's life is in your hand. Now, granted, that's not going to happen your first day, and I don't get to do that. Even if you're an attending, nobody's going to walk in there and say, okay, this person's life. Even with Dr. Chirikian, he's got other senior people that he goes to and he answers to and responds to. So you're not going to show up the first day in the hospital and they're going to say, okay, this person's life is in your hand. go with it. Like there's a lot of steps and there's a lot of people that make sure, and you're not going to be the first person that's going to go through, so they know what you can and can't handle, and also asking for help, So yeah, I mean that imposter syndrome, happens to everyone, and so it could be a fuel or it could be a detriment, but either way. But yeah, get in some, look at that video that we did on getting clinical experience because there's some things that you could do and you could, that you could get in and see. And that's why like shadowing is so important because if, you're spending the next 10 years of your life and $300,000, if you don't know what it is, that's like a big risk. So, I mean, I've seen a lot of people show up to the hospital and they're like, oh, I have a 4.0 grade, but then they see somebody bleed or vomit and they're just totally grossed out and they don't want to do it. So, that's like a good place, good way to find out if that's what you want. Because the human body has some really funky odors.
Yes. I won't get into too much detail, but absolutely.
Also, let me just talk about I don't think it takes a genius to know what medicine is all about. Trinity, Angelina, Nishida, what are the things that you think need to change in medicine? If I could just ask a question to all three of you guys.
I think an area that's come to light a lot in the lab that I work in deals a lot with breast cancer and stuff like that. So I think that little experience has really opened up my eyes to the lack of prioritization of women's health issues, especially in research. A lot of stuff is a lot further behind than it should be because they've neglected a very large research population. So I think that's an area that I'm passionate about. I volunteer in the ER, and just over my shifts, I've seen the very different presentation of someone that might have the same clinical indications but are not presenting the same. Like a man who walks in with chest pain and stuff is hooked up to EKG right away, seen right away, whereas I had a woman in the ER go into cardiac arrest in the waiting room because probably lack of education on what the signs and symptoms of a heart attack for a woman of her age would be isn't the typical chest pain down the left side of my arm thing. So just stuff like that I think has really been an issue that I think needs to be addressed more is women's health.
Yeah, I agree.
I think an issue that I see a lot when I'm volunteering is we don't have enough physicians. We don't have enough people in general in the medical field who can speak the languages of those who come into these hospitals. They're expecting someone who can understand them. They're expecting someone who can help them, and they're not there. And if you use the translator apps, they can't help you in the same way that a person right next to you can help you, which I find incredibly, incredibly discouraging. And for me, I can speak 2 languages, so I can help out as much, but I'm only a volunteer, so there's not much I can do. I just wish there was more in the medical field when it comes to helping. Those language barriers really hurt. So I'm hoping that that will change.
Oh, did I lose everyone? Well, yeah, go ahead, Angelina.
Sorry, can you hear me? Is my mic working?
Yes.
One of the things that I'm sorry. One of the things I noticed when doing research and stuff is that a lot of times physicians have to negotiate with insurance companies where they know that the patient should have this treatment or this scan or stuff like that, but the insurance companies wouldn't want to pay for that, and it's not really fair for me because a lot of people in my family is they have a lot of they own business and stuff, and I think like insurance companies, I guess like they want to like be the most profitable, but their options for that patient might not be the best for them, and that can limit like what physicians can do, I think, which yeah.
Well, all three of those things are on the line. And if none of you guys step up to do it, it's not going to get solved. Nishida, you brought up a good point, language barriers. Reach out to David and me. That's something we're really interested about. That's our one issue. But all of those things speak to you, and you're the only person that can solve it. If you become a doctor and you say, I don't like the clinic, you can still do whatever it is as a doctor, whether it's through research, whether it's through advocacy, to change exactly that issue that's speaking to you right now. And I think that you have to use that as the driving mechanism to push you to go into it. As long as you have that identification as to, oh my God, this is what I need to do with my life. This is what I need to do to fix this world and make it a better place. I think that this could be a good and fulfilling, promising career. Even if medicine ends up not being your thing, there's something that you can take with you from your background to kind of address that.
I second everything that George says, 100%. All those three things you each mentioned are things that I see every day, like every single day. Issues in women's health, issues with barriers in language in medicine, and of course, the age-old problem of insurance in medicine. And I think what he's saying is very important. If you're passionate about something, you are uniquely qualified to do something about it. Uniquely qualified. You could be the smartest person in the world and you could do whatever you want, but if you're not passionate about it, there's not going to be change. And so if you guys are all passionate about all those things, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to try your best, do what you can, become the doctors that you guys want to be, make the change that you want to see in this world.
It looks like the Q&A is empty. Jubin usually does the sign off, but I know you guys are busy, so if you have to go, that's no problem.
Yeah, I'm
We just
actually
really
at
want to
work.
thank you guys. There he is.
Yeah, no, I'm actually at work, so I'm like doing like two things at the same time. No, thanks everyone. I think we have all the questions answered, and I think nobody else has any questions, so we'll let everyone go. But yeah, I'm trying to like do two things at the same time, so not very successful at them. The whole multitasking thing is a lie in life. So, anyways, but thank you again, Dr. Chirikian, for coming. Thank you, George, for stopping by. I hope you were not driving, but I don't want to know.
I was on. It was Uber. It was Uber. I promise.
Okay.
But
I don't want to know if you were driving. All right. When are you going to be back up in the Bay?
I'm coming back in 3 weeks to do my NorCal rotation. David, one of these days we'll do like a language concordance session, and we'll invite Dr. Diamond or something.
Looking forward.
I love you. I love you with my whole heart. There's no one better. I've never had a better friend, guys. So this is truly an inspiration, and thank you for being here. It means a lot.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for everyone.
Thank
Feel
you.
free to help me if you guys have any questions. I mean it. Okay, I'm happy. Give me a couple of days, but I promise I'll get back to you.
Thanks.